The night is thick with humidity, the air heavy, with the scent of magnolias and smoke from distant gas lamps. The French Quarter is alive with laughter and music, grand parties spilling into the streets, women twirling in silk gowns, men toasting to their fortunes. And towering over it all is 1140 Royal Street, a mansion of unmatched elegance. Inside, Madame Delphine LaLaurie, draped in a gown of shimmering fabric, moves effortlessly through her lavish home, greeting guests with a perfect practice smile. To those who matter, she is the jewel of New Orleans society, an aristocrat, a patron of the arts, a woman of refinement. But beneath the surface, beneath the silk and the smiles, something twisted and monstrous lurks. Because in the attic, beyond the grand staircases and golden chandeliers, screams are echoing through the walls. Screams that no one dares to acknowledge. Yet, welcome to GBRLIFE Transmissions. I'm your host, Caitlin, and you're listening to GBRLIFE of Crimes, where we explore not just what happened in crimes committed by women, but why they happened and the psychology behind them. Today, we unravel the horrifying story of Delphine LaLaurie, a woman drenched in cruelty and born into power, a combination we should fear the most. She remains one of the most infamous names in true crime history. Most criminals are made by tragedy. They are shaped by poverty, abuse, or desperation. Not Delphine LaLaurie. She was born Marie Delphine McCarty in 1787 in one of Louisiana's most powerful families. Her childhood was spent among wealth, privilege, and excess. From the moment she could walk, she was taught that power was absolute and violence was necessary to maintain it. Delphine's family wasn't just wealthy, they were brutal. In 1771, before she was born, a violent uprising broke out in Louisiana. Enslaved people rebelled against their masters. The McCarty family, they survived, but they did so by executing the rebels publicly, sending a message that disobedience would be met with unimaginable cruelty. This is the world Delphine grew up in. A world where dominance was the law and suffering was the cost of control. Psychologists studying violent criminals often talk about learned cruelty, when a child grows up in an environment where abuse is normalized. And when this happens, these children either become fearful of it or they embrace it. With Delphine, she clearly embraced it. She learned early that suffering was not only expected but deserved for those beneath her. As Delphine became a teen, she also became a wife. Delphine married her first husband, Don Ramon Lopez y Angulo, at 14 years old. A Spanish officer with political power, he was her ticket to even greater wealth and influence. Then in 1804, while traveling to Spain, Don Ramon died suddenly, under circumstances that remain unclear to this day. One day, she was a pampered aristocrat, protected and adored. The next, she was alone, stranded in a foreign country, powerless. Psychologists studying criminal behavior often look at key trauma points, moments that alter a person's sense of control. For Delphine, this was the first major fracture. Some people grieve and adapt. Others become obsessed with never being powerless again. For Delphine, her reaction wasn't just grief, it was rage. This wasn't just about losing a husband. It was about losing control, something she had been taught never to do. For women of her status in the 1800s, merit was power. Without a husband, she was nothing in the eyes of society. She was forced to return to New Orleans, a widow, at 19, humiliated and vulnerable. And for someone like Delphine, that would never happen again. So within 2 years, she remarried to a man who guaranteed her security. In 1807, at just 21 years old, Delphine married Jean Blanc, a wealthy banker and lawyer who wasn't just rich, he was politically powerful, a man with connections and influence. She was secured not just with wealth, but status. They married for 8 years, having 4 daughters together. But then it happened again. In 1816, Blanc died suddenly, just as mysterious as her first husband. And no foul play was ever proven, but questions lingered. 2 husbands, both dead within 12 years of each other. Was it just tragedy, or did Delphine learn something from the first time? Psychologists analyzing psychopathy and power-driven personalities often look at patterns of loss and how they're handled. And for Delphine, her reaction to death changed. The first death shattered her. The second death hardened her. By this point, she wasn't a hopeless, helpless widow. She was a woman who knew how to survive loss and how to use it to her advantage. This time, she became wealthier. And now there was no grieving young girl left, only a woman who had learned that power was something you took, not something you were given. Control, power, domination, and soon she would meet the man who would take her cruelty to new depths. In 1825, at the age of 38, she met Dr. LaLaurie, a young, ambitious doctor, almost 20 years her junior. By now, you may wonder, who was Dr. LaLaurie? Dr. Louis LaLaurie was a French physician trained in experimental medicine who had moved to Louisiana to establish himself. He was intelligent, respected, and fascinated by scientific advancements in surgery and anatomy, particularly in human experimentation. He had the knowledge and the tools. And Delphine? Well, she had the money, power, and twisted desire. It was a perfect storm. Psychologists studying criminal partnerships have identified a pattern. When 2 individuals with dark impulses come together, their behavior escalates. One fuels the other, and together they cross lines that they never would have alone. Delphine was obsessed with control and dominance. Louis was obsessed with human body experimentation. And so, under his medical guidance and her sadistic curiosity, they began something far worse than anything Delphine had ever done before, at least that is known. At first, their marriage seemed like a scandal. A wealthy, well-known socialite marrying a man so much younger than her. Many of her elite peers behind her back, questioning why she would marry a man beneath her station. But Delphine didn't care about gossip at this point in her life. She had found someone who wouldn't stop her. And by 1831, they moved into the infamous mansion at 1140 Royal Street. A 3-story masterpiece decorated with the finest European furniture, chandeliers, and artwork. To outsiders, it was a palace. Inside, it was a laboratory of nightmares. Louise provided the surgical tools. Delphine provided the victims. Together, they pushed the limits of cruelty, turning human beings into medical experiments. They selected victims carefully, choosing enslaved people who wouldn't be missed. Delphine's rage and need for control only deepened with age. She no longer saw people as humans, only objects to dominate and destroy. And Louis, he fed into it, his own curiosity for the human body blending with Delphine's hunger for power and pain. Psychologists have a name for this kind of dynamic in couples. It's called mutual psychopathy. When one violent individual meets another, instead of stopping each other, they feed off each other. It pushes the other further. It encourages more cruelty. And before long, they didn't see the line between right and wrong anymore. If Delphine had never met Louis, maybe she wouldn't have gone so far. Maybe her sadism would have been hidden, controlled. But with Louis by her side, armed with the knowledge and scalpels, there was no restraint. And the horrors of the LaLaurie mansion would soon shock New Orleans forever. Criminal psychology shows that violent partnerships that could fall under the mutual psychopathy, or they may not, often follow a pattern. One partner is the dominant force, in this case, Delphine, the sadist who craved control, and the other is the enabler or the facilitator. Louis, with his medical knowledge, made her fantasies possible. Together, they escalated into something neither could have done alone, as mentioned. But this happened in many other infamous crime duos like Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, Myra Hindley and Ian Bradley, Bonnie and Clyde. You can find that season 1, episode 9 on GBRLIFE of Crimes. When one partner is violent but controlled and the other is willing to indulge and escalate, the result is pure horror. And, as mentioned, that's exactly what happened with the LaLaurie's. Until that well-known day, April 10th, 1834. The scent of burning wood filled the air. A fire broke out in the LaLaurie mansion, smoke billowing into the sky. When authorities arrived, they found a terrified elderly woman chained to the stove. She was Delphine's cook, and she set the fire on purpose. Why, you ask? Because there's something upstairs. When they broke down the doors to the attic, what they found shocked even the most hardened men in New Orleans. Bodies chained to the walls. Men and women alive, grotesquely defaced. Lips sewn shut, eyes gouged out, limbs broken and reset at unnatural angles. It was not just torture. It was medical experimentation. And Delphine? She vanished into the night. Before the city could drag her to the streets, she fled, escaping earthly justice forever. What makes Delphine LaLaurie one of the most terrifying female criminals in history is that she had no reason to do what she did. She was not desperate. She wasn't forced. She was cruel because she could be. And psychologists classify her behavior as classic psychopathy, which I'm sure you guessed at this point. But here's the evidence. She had a total lack of empathy because she inflicted unimaginable pain without remorse. She also showed thrill-seeking behavior since she didn't just torture, she experimented. That was not just her husband, it was her. And with that experimentation and royal flair, she also showed a need for absolute control. Even in her public life, everything was calculated. And the most chilling part is she got away with it. The LaLaurie mansion still stands today. It's one of the most haunted places in America, with countless reports of screams, shadows, and ghostly figures. Delphine's name has been immortalized in books, TV, and film, most famously in American Horror Story Coven. But the real story here is that she was real, and she never paid for what she did on Earth. Delphine LaLaurie's story is a terrifying reminder that power, when unchecked, can turn monstrous, and power with status can hide the kind of behavior that shows the worst of mankind. So when you look up to those in power, don't be surprised if skeletons come out of their closets. And trust the skeleton, not the royal facade. This has been GBRLIFE of Crimes, part of GBRLIFE Transmissions. I'm Caitlin, reminding you that understanding the darkness helps us appreciate the light. Join me next time as we uncover another case that challenges everything we thought we knew about the criminal mind.